Welcome to this Introduction to IELTS video series. In this video, we are going to introduce and discuss some test-taking strategies that will help you do well on the IELTS listening test. This video will be divided into two parts. Part 1, general problems that students often encounter when taking the IELTS listening test, and Part 2, strategies to learn for success. This video will also feature some activities for you to practice using the strategies that we will introduce. Firstly, let's begin by identifying the problems that students often encounter during the IELTS listening test. General problems students often encounter in the IELTS listening test. The biggest feedback from students regarding problems they've had with the IELTS listening test is that they didn't have enough time. That means they didn't have enough time to read the questions, they didn't have enough time to listen, and they didn't have enough time to write down their answers at the end. All of these problems typically result from one thing, and that is panic. When you are put into high-pressure situations where you only have 5 minutes to listen to a recording of people talking in a foreign language, and you are required to pick out specific pieces of information from that conversation, it is only natural that you will panic. This is especially because you are sitting one of the biggest and most important tests of your life. The problem is, when you do panic, you don't hear the information you need to answer the questions in the test. Many students taking the IELTS listening test complain that the recordings are only played once. You may feel like it is impossible to answer all the questions after only hearing the information for 5 minutes. It is important, though, to remember that the IELTS test is preparing you for real-life situations. In real life, you can't expect someone to continue repeating themselves until you completely understand everything they've said. That's why it's important to prepare well for the test. Not just so you can do well, but also to boost your confidence in your listening abilities. The best way to prepare for the IELTS listening test is by practicing test-taking strategies that will help you. The good news is that the listening test is probably the easiest section of IELTS to make an improvement in if you have mastered a few basic strategies. So, let's find out some more. Strategies to learn for success. Timed practice test. It is very true that the more you practice, the more confident you will feel. Therefore, the first strategy we are going to introduce is the timed practice test. We recommend that you sit down and do some practice tests that are timed similarly to the IELTS listening test. Doing this kind of practice enables you to become comfortable listening to a recording and answering a number of questions within a time frame. The IELTS website offers many listening practice activities, including recording examples from all sections of the test. It is important, however, that you practice listening to these recordings only once so that you can become confident with the official IELTS listening test time frame. Reading ahead. Another side effect of the panic that some students suffer during the IELTS test is that they are not prepared to listen out for the specific information they need to answer the questions. One strategy to help with this problem is taking advantage of the paused time before the start of the recordings. In this period, you should read over the questions that you need to answer for that section. When you use this strategy, you will keep the questions fresh in your mind as you listen and therefore focus your concentration to pick out the specific information you need. Targeted listening. If we think more about reading ahead, we can also introduce targeted listening. Targeted listening is when you focus your attention on the 10 items of information required to answer the 10 questions in the section that you are taking. This means that when you do read ahead to see what the questions you are going to answer, you should decide on 1 or 2 word summaries of the information you need to answer for that certain question. For example, if the question asks, What is the address the courier must pick the package up from? Well, then you know you must be listening for an address. We will now simulate the benefits of reading ahead and targeted listening. In this brief example, we will provide a 1-minute conversation with 2 questions. In the real test, you would be required to listen to a 5-minute conversation and answer 10 questions. We will allow you 20 seconds before the recording to read the questions. Use this 20 seconds to read the questions and identify what information you should be listening for. You have 20 seconds to read the questions. Now, pause the video and play the audio tool 1 found below. You can also read along as you listen. So, in number 1, what is the surname of the person booking a table? Remember that we are looking for a surname. In number 2, what time is the booking for? We were looking for a time. The answer to number 1 is Vreeland, V-R-E-E-L-A-N-D. The answer to number 2 is 7:10. Did you notice your attention was focused on the specific information you needed? Rather than going in completely blind, you were able to read ahead and target your listening, which made you better prepared for the recording. Take notes. Another strategy to practice before taking the IELTS listening test is taking notes. This may seem simple, but it is still important. You need to take care and make notes of things that are important. For example, going back to your targeted listening skills, you could use these key words as things to note down while you're listening. At the end of the test, when you are transferring your answers to the answers page, if you are unsure of one particular answer, you can make a sensible guess from your notes. It is important to remember that you should only note down targeted information that you have identified from the questions. If you get into the habit of noting down everything you think is important, you may miss the information you need. Practice your spelling. If you have trouble with spelling, now is the best time to start correcting some bad habits. There will be some questions in the test that require you to write down the answer. Unfortunately, the wrong spelling may result in an incorrect result. It is very important for you to be confident in your spelling skills. If there are certain words like names and addresses that may be difficult to spell or have multiple spelling variations, they will be spelled out for you by the speakers. Make sure you listen carefully in these situations. For everything else, you are on your own, so start practicing your spelling. Here are some quick activities to see if you need to practice your spelling. We will provide some sentences, and then we will ask you to pause the video and write down the sentence. When you have finished, click play again to see if you are correct. Pause the video now if you need to get a pen and some paper. Okay, here we go. Listen to the following sentence and pause the video as you write it down. The bandage was wound around the wound. Here is the correct spelling. The bandage was wound around the wound. Okay, and again, listen to the following sentence and pause the video as you write it down. The soldier decided to desert his dessert in the desert. Here is the correct spelling. The soldier decided to desert his dessert in the desert. As you can see, sometimes spelling in English can be confusing. Practice as much as you can. Attempt every question. You must take every possible chance to answer every question. This gives you the best opportunity to pass the test. Using all the strategies outlined in this video will give you the best chance to do this. However, if you come across a question that you absolutely cannot answer, well, take a guess. Make it a sensible guess, and you might just get lucky. If the question is a multiple choice answer and you are unsure of the correct option, well, choose the most likely. Going into the test with the goal to answer every question is the best strategy to employ for success in the IELTS listening test. That brings us to the end of this video. Let's recap what we've learned. The number one problem is panic, not having enough time, not feeling confident. Use strategies to practice. Timed practice test. Reading ahead. Targeted listening. Take notes. Practice spelling. Answer every question. In this video, we spoke about the problems students often encounter in the IELTS listening test. Feedback from students is that they didn't have enough time. They could only listen to the recording once and that they didn't feel confident. A great way to practice for the IELTS listening test so that you don't encounter these problems is to use some test-taking strategies. You could do some timed practice tests so you can become confident with the IELTS listening test time frame. You could practice reading ahead and targeting your listening for the specific information you need. You should always take notes while the recording is playing. That way, if you are unsure of an answer, you can rely on your notes. Lastly, you should practice your spelling. Not all the questions will be multiple choice. You will have to write some out. Finally, make sure you take great care to answer every question. This gives you the best chance to get the best marks you can. See you next time. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe. We have over 75 video lessons that were designed by an IELTS examiner who knows how to help you get the score you deserve. If you'd like to access more Father IELTS videos, more sample tasks, worksheets, and even use some of our practice exams, well, check out our full courses over on Udemy by clicking on the links in the description below. Those links will give you 85% off the full course price and give you full access to all of the materials we offer. I wish you the best of luck on your IELTS exam. See you next time.